Hello and welcome back to the One Take Show podcast. In this episode, we are in conversation with a very special guest. Our guest today is Mr. Abhishek Subbaiah. Sir is the founder and managing partner at Bridge Legal India. And in this episode, he brings the experience of working in multiple forays of legal profession, bringing the experience of in-house from ICICI Bank or Cisco to law firm experience of Kaitan, Amarchand and JSA, and finally opening his own law firm in Bangalore, Bridge Legal, which I think is creating its own mark and is finding that niche and is making a lot of noise around it, which is absolutely wonderful. He is also the host of a brilliant podcast called the Bridge Legal Podcast, which is available on different platforms. Links to the same are down in the description, so please make sure you check out this podcast. Sir briefs the various developments and the upcoming things that are happening in the legal world in that podcast, and I think it is extremely useful for any law student. More so, I genuinely love the post-production quality of that podcast. So yeah, that's also something that we talk about. Apart from that, we talk about a very different route of a conversation, because we are used to a style of conversation where the seniors tell us what to do in the legal profession, which I think is useful, definitely. But a different route of conversation is what not to do, which is very interesting about this conversation. It is very candid, very gritty, and very honest. We talk about different things, though different work cultures in different organizations. We talk about the current employer-employee relationship and how the status quo needs to change. We also talk about how we can adapt, what are the things we should avoid, everything in this just one episode. And I'm really excited about this episode, so if you like it, please make sure you like, share and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions or feedbacks, write them down in the comment section. I would love to read them. It's people, without any further ado, let's jump right in.
You want something, go get it. Period.
3, 2 and 1, we're recording. Hello sir, welcome back to the One Take Show. The reason why I say welcome back, because we sort of had a test run yesterday, but nonetheless it's more than a pleasure, and it's in fact an honor to have you on the podcast as many times as it takes for us to have a conversation. And yeah, I'm very excited to host you. I am genuinely excited to learn more and more about the conceptual idea that we already have discussed in the previous conversation about what not to do in law, and possibly discuss your podcast as well. So thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedule.
Thank you for having me back again. I'm sure I'm the first guest who's come back to your show, so that's interesting. But thanks for having me, of course.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a huge fan of your show. I think there are very few people actually taking the initiative to
Mhm.
get in touch with different kinds of working professionals, not just in one realm of law, or not even law. In fact, I think there were some videos generally with art and cinema. So kudos to you. I wish I had done something like this in law school. I just didn't have the drive for it, or rather the skills for it. So kudos to you. I'm a huge fan of your channel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. And I think I can very safely say that I genuinely believe that I am a huge fan of legal podcasts in general. I check out every one of them. So that I can, as a law student, I think it is one of my privileges and one of my duties to do that. Your podcast is by far one of the most informative ones. And I'll specifically say why, because your production quality, being very honest, is up to the mark, right up there. And I generally love any podcast which takes care of their production quality. And yeah, I think we had a bit of a glitch with Iris, but I think Zoom, as being staple platform as it is, works out in most of the situations.
It does. I think it was a chance to increase production values, but it's fine. We tried. That's what matters. But yeah, good old Zoom going to carry us forward. But thanks for the podcast. So I get a lot of inputs on that, with a lot of people saying, why isn't there music? Why isn't there constant background as well? And it seems to be a little different. But what I try to get across to most people is that it needs to be, unlike speaking, you can't hear people clearly. There's a lot of issues there. The idea was to have a podcast that's not longer than 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, that someone can just listen to, likes listening to. That's really important, right? Your ears are very important sensory organs, so you should be able to appreciate what you're listening to. So that was the idea. So a lot of people are appreciating it, a lot of people don't get it. But I have a lot of fun doing it, and that's the point. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think podcast's biggest USP is how good of an audio experience it can provide, because that is the only way we can perceive a good podcast, especially if it is on an audio platform. And the reason I
Yeah.
think most of the podcasts right now are not doing good, including mine, like I would like to believe that it's doing good, but statistically it's not. I'm sure yours is doing much better. Is perhaps because the conversation could improve. And you're right. I think most of the biggest of the podcasts that we have right now, they don't usually have music a lot. Content is the king. I think your content is very unique. You had fun talking with the guests as well and compiling all the data that you do.
I do. It's a lot of fun. So I think I mentioned this to you and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other people earlier. I'm the one who benefits the most out of these
Okay.
podcasts, and I remember you as
Mm-hmm.
well mentioning that you as well,
Mm-hmm.
benefit the most with a lot of your interactions with,
Yeah.
most of the guests on your show. I'm sure before and after the interview as well. That's when, a bit of the backstage nuggets kind of get to you. But uh, it's different in the sense that, see, it takes a lot of work to actually write out a transcript. And
Mm-hmm.
for example, we're freewheeling this, but when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to down to a podcast, someone's going to invest about 10 to
Yeah.
15 minutes of their time. I'd
Mm-hmm.
assume that, I
Mm-hmm.
need to have everything nailed down in terms of what I want to say. So that takes some time. The production takes some time. There may be
Mm-hmm.
a dog barking in the background that, oh shit, I'm going to rework that again. So we take that really seriously in terms of what we do. And it 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 is a bit of effort, but it definitely pays off. And just one more thing. So please don't follow the statistics and numbers. First of all,
Yeah.
we're lawyers here. You're not going to have that kind of audience. You're not making YouTube clips on shows, right? Uh, so chasing numbers, I think, is something that we shouldn't do for sure. And this goes out to, whoever's listening in and they want to create content. Please don't go by content views, LinkedIn likes, or the stats that keep hitting you up. The five avid listeners, and now six, thanks to
Mm-hmm.
Costa, thanks for mentioning that. The six avid listeners that tune into my podcast, they make my day. I just need six people to actually understand what I'm saying and appreciate that. So that's all
Mm-hmm.
that matters. The numbers really shouldn't count.
Yeah.
Same goes for LinkedIn posts as well. I see a lot of really good LinkedIn posts with
Yeah.
very, very few likes. I try to bump those up, as opposed to, let's say, someone getting an award for something, 4 or 5 times a year or something like that, which gets 200 hits by people for some reason. But
Right.
you know where I'm going with this. The numbers really don't do the
Mm-hmm.
quality of the content justice. So huge fan of your show, and it's something that no one else is doing. So
Right.
really appreciate what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned LinkedIn posts. I think we had this remark yesterday when I appreciate it, and I still do. I think I genuinely enjoy your posts. One reason is why, because I think this is unfair of me to say this, but I have a reservation against self promotion. But
Yeah.
essentially, I think LinkedIn, your posts, for example, are either honest or they are highlighting an issue or informative in one way or the other. The others are either celebratory or something that I don't know. It can be wrong from any end. But I think what you have said previously also, like when we were having a conversation, you pointed out that your approach to any advice is that you don't necessarily preach what needs to be done and what needs like how the law student can map out things. You go the other
Yeah.
way around. You go the Mahabharata
Yeah.
way, where you tell people what not to do. How's that
Right.
conceptually? How do you somehow work that in a conversation?
See, I think it's a bit unfair for someone who hasn't experienced work life to get onto LinkedIn, or someone who hasn't experienced work life in a large situation to get onto LinkedIn and be sold this very fake idea of, oh, this person's getting promoted, or I'm getting this award, and I'm so glad that I represented this client on $700 million deal, and I'm working on this, that, and everything else. But where is the gritty realism of all of it? Okay, now we understand. At least I'm in the corporate law sphere. I can't speak of litigants, although they are also coming. Litigators are also coming onto the LinkedIn platform, which is really, really good. But
Yeah.
where is the realism? So if you're having a conversation on LinkedIn, if everything's going to be about I did this, I did that, I accomplished this, or we as a firm did this or that, at some point I'm going to assume that the audience is going to understand that, okay, it's a bit too shiny, right? That can't be real. So it's a bit about connecting as well. A lot of my experiences have been tragic, and in that sense, they make for really good
Okay.
comedy as well. So
Right.
that's the kind of connect that I try to get to. So
Mm-hmm.
in most of my posts on LinkedIn, I try to keep it professional, but it's also an element of, oh man, that sucked, right?
Yeah.
You see where I'm
Yeah.
going with this, right? So
Yeah.
it's just that connection to say that, okay, I empathize with
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying and what you're thinking, and I'm not 30,000 feet up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
We're all human. We have the same issues. Some of us graduated 10 years, 15 years. 15 years back, fine. Even if you're looking at some of the most senior people that are connecting on LinkedIn, there's not so much of a difference. We were all interns at some point of time, not
Yeah.
too long ago. I mean, I remember it extremely clearly. So that engagement and the content that needs to be there needs to be a lot more real. It needs to be a lot more gritty, and that's what this generation is doing. By the way, in with most of the media that they're consuming, and I say they because I like to believe that I'm a little old now,
Okay.
right? But
Yeah.
I choose the generation when it suits me. So. Um, yeah, so it's realism is definitely what's required. You have a
Yeah.
generation that's extremely skeptical, cynical,
Mm-hmm.
definitely not the traditional millennial trope by all means, at least not in India. People are having extremely hard times with
Mm-hmm.
college exams, jobs, all sorts of things. So the realism is something that I think podcasts, media, content, this is something that we need to put out there. Self promotion is completely pointless, in my opinion, because I started noticing that most of my posts, when they started getting a little more real and a little less formal, that and educative, right? So I started alienating my peers at this PQ, for example, right? It's mostly the younger generation that is now connecting to it. And I'm fine with this because I mentioned this earlier as well. LinkedIn seems like one very large advertisement, right? So now hopefully things are
Wow.
changing. I really like the way my feed is now. I
Mm-hmm.
really like the people who are there on it, and there's something
Right.
to learn in this. It's refreshing. It's different. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And LinkedIn is just a template advertisement. I think I need to save that for half of my Instagram posts from now. I'm going to use that as a caption. I've had my reservations from LinkedIn. It almost seems like it was on
Yeah.
steroids, especially after COVID, or every law student
Yeah.
was doing 500 things and was posting about it, which I think is okay. Just makes me personally very uncomfortable. But I think you point out something very interesting. You say that being the realism or the gritty reality behind any success whatsoever is not shiny
Yeah.
and it will not necessarily draw the attention. There are two sort of perspectives that I want to present to you with because I want your opinion on that. One is that law is an industry of branding where you can't necessarily
Yeah.
advertise yourself, but you still have to advertise yourself. And the other is that the posts which do post their gritty reality at times become very pretentious, as in, what's your biggest weakness? My biggest weakness is that I'm too hardworking, sort of posts. So, yeah, I mean, what is your opinion on that?
I mean, everyone sees through it, and it's not just posts about, okay, this is how I did this, and this is how I became amazing, and this is how my job and my life is just so much more amazing now. It's also people who state that I did this out of hard work. Interns need to do this, and associates need to do this. But listen, what kind of family did you come from? What's your monetary situation? What kind of college did you go to? Or rather, what kind of college did you get into? That's also a bit of luck, right? It's not just skill. So,
Yeah.
and when did you graduate? When did all this happen? So these are factors that are very relevant, right? So I like to believe that a lot of people are now seeing through that sheen. It's tarnishing slightly now, but yeah, I just look at those posts and I go, okay, good for you. There's no point being negative about it. I mean, if that floats your boat. Promotions are great. Whenever I see anyone, I think there was a lot of criticism against people in LinkedIn promoting getting a new job and getting promoted. That's amazing. Why would you have an issue with that? It's your peer that you're connected to on LinkedIn out of your own volition, and they're doing well for themselves. Be happy for them. I mean, that's fine. But some of the content out there that goes viral, yes, I think there are some cynics and skeptics that look at the post and say, okay, but what value is it actually adding? I mean, you're just selling a dream to someone. I mean, how is it actually helping anyone? So I think that's changing. I'm hoping people are a lot more aware of this, and it just comes down to you just being aware of it. But I have to mention another thing. LinkedIn's an amazing portal for finding people for projects. I've hired people for projects through, if you do the job search correctly and close it on time, which is another one of my issues with recruiters. It's a wonderful platform because you get to be formal, you connect with people. I've met some of my clients through LinkedIn, so it's just a question of how you use it. The problem is, yes, the advertising. I mean, honestly, between you and I, the awards industry is completely broken. I'm sorry, it's a farce. It's happened with a lot of industries, and I'm not saying this because I'm a new firm, and it's not a question of us nominating ourselves for awards, etc. But you get 4 to 5 people contacting you even when you haven't started your practice. I mean, that's an indicator of how broken the entire situation is. So clearly, people are finding surrogate ways of advertising, and that's a little bad. But I guess everyone does what they have to do. So no negativity there.
Right.
If you see something like that on your feed, you've connected or you've followed that particular person or company or firm. So it's up to you really to choose what you want to do. But your lens needs to be a lot more realistic for sure.
Right. When I somehow look at it from a helicopter's view, I'm scared. Am I becoming a cynic, or am I just getting too cynical with my approach on this?
See, this applies. Okay, and this is a very good lesson with how we work as well. There's nothing wrong in identifying a problem or problems. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It just means that you have an eye for finding out issues, right? But the difference between being a cynic and a skeptic is whether you actually think about what the solution could be to it. Are you just going to sit in a corner and crib about it, or are you actually going to do something about it? So if one feels that LinkedIn is getting to be a little too fictitious, then do something about it. Put out some original content. Do something about it. So you and anyone else, please don't worry about getting too cynical. That is, by the way, any scientist or any philosopher from any age has always questioned the norm. They have always asked the Socratic question of why, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I see a lot of people also going down the road, and me myself included as well. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal here. Again, gritty realism. I am human. I have gone through phases where I feel extremely cynical about the industry, law firms, the way it's functioning. I just decided, okay, stop cribbing about it. Let's see whether you can do a better job. And okay, challenge accepted. Start doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then when you did, so I like to go back into the timeline, sort of, if that makes any sense. I mean, let's start with Bridge Legal right now. So when you did make that decision of moving away from your practice in law firms, and you had an experience with some of the top law firms in the country, and also coming from the experience of in-house, now that you decide to move with Bridge Legal, what were the major challenges that you faced as someone who's starting out in and I think I read that you purposefully went through a course in IIM Calcutta, and you decided to further the study of fintech and include that as a practice to create a niche for your clientele, and somehow evolve Bridge Legal in that format. What was the major takeaways and challenges in that area?
I'll have to be honest. I haven't faced too many challenges, and I'm really lucky and blessed for that. I haven't faced too many challenges. Work's been coming in because of the quality of the work we put out is good. Our clients are happy so far with what we do. We have a very personal take towards things. So challenges, not so much, and also because I have a very supportive family. I have a very supportive support system in general, right? So, and I haven't met a single person from not only seniors or people I've worked with, etc. It's always been congratulations. It's not been why or Ish, how are you doing it? Okay, how's it going? All well, right? So it's never been that way. So I wouldn't. It would be unfair to say that I faced challenges, at least not yet, right? We're fairly young there, so just prayers to God there. It's been amazing. In terms of why, it's just a question of doing something different. The course with IIM as well. I think I'm the only lawyer there in a course of I think 150 people, right? And it's something that I need to do because that this is more industry specific in terms of BFSI moving to fintech, and a lot of lawyers rebranding themselves as fintech lawyers because they're just doing the same thing but via technology, right? So either working for companies that aggregate data or just act as gateways or act as wallets, right? But I'm not going to get too technical into that. But a big reason for doing that was because I wanted to understand exactly how a fintech business works inside out. And again, that's cynicism again. When someone used to ask me, listen, are you a fintech lawyer? Can you do this job? I'd ask myself, what's a fintech lawyer? I don't get it. It's using technology to propagate finance or make it more available to a large part of the population. Yeah, but the RBI already gives you circulars on that. Why do you need a separate fintech classification for it? But I'm learning different things now. So learning, that's another point. There's always scope to learn. The second thing is obviously learning a lot more things with newer areas such as privacy. So we have a slight problem of it's not a problem actually, it's economies of scale. So if you have a factory,
Right.
you do have certain components doing very specific kinds of jobs, and when you have large organizations, you end up being a specific function within that large organization. The move away and to work with something a little more general was to get back to an in-house esque route, to say that okay, let me learn privacy, technology, TMT law as well as my BFSI law, because my clients want an entire package. They don't want to go running to 3-4 different teams in a law firm. So that's the reason I decided to pursue that. It works both ways. I should be very honest. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the way verticalization and team structures work with law firms. It works for them because they have large uh, rosters of people, right, to work for them. For me, it's a little different, and yeah, that was the main push. It's also another angle. So things have changed. I should tell you this. Between my generation, the generation that passed out maybe 5 to 10 years ago, and also your generation, right? There's a huge difference in terms of how much time it takes to become an actual partner in a law firm. And I have to say this.
Okay.
The timelines are getting extended a lot. There was nothing known as a PA designation till about, I think, 10 years ago, right? It got created between senior associate and partner. You now have partner, meaning equity, you now have retained salary partner, and you have counsel and off counsel. Now, these seem to me to be additional steps in this ladder that just extend the timeline to get to your actual job, which is also sales. No one talks about that, because when everyone's talking about getting into law firm, I need to know my law inside out. Fine, you're working out of an office, you're trying to better your law, your negotiation, your drafting skills, etc. But you find yourself 10 years into the profession not knowing a very core skill of sales. And it's very hard because you're supposed to sell without advertising, which means that you're supposed to make connections. And this job is harder for you than it is for me. When I say you, I mean people graduating now and interns, because the market's saturated. The bigger firms have already taken up most of the bigger clients as well. So you have to ask yourself, okay, how am I going to manage this? Do I go down the route of working in an organization where I'm just a part in a larger structure, or do you want to actually again work on that cynicism to say that okay, I'm going to do this myself? So these are questions you need to be asking yourself, in terms of what route you want to be taking. But one thing I definitely need to mention is, please keep in mind, in the long term, whether you're a corporate lawyer or a litigator, or really when you're practicing any kind of law or any kind of business, you need to be able to sell your business, which means that you need to have a really good product, and you need to be able to get people to use it.
Yeah, I've never had anyone talk about this. For some reason, I'm hearing about this for the first time, that there needs, I mean, sure, something that I mean, this is going to sound very, very naive, but I'm going to say it. But the only place I can relate to it is watching it on American TV shows and Suits and whatnot. I've never realized
Yeah.
that even in
Yeah.
Indian law firms, our impression is that you just have to work 18 hours a day, put all your effort and everything, and that's how you succeed in law firm.
Yeah.
And so,
No, it's yeah. No, please continue. Yeah.
no, but from your experience, I think we can also see your tracking back a little bit when you were working for law firms in teams and working for some of the best law firms, which mean that they would also require the input and the investment from your end, physical, mental, and the hard work, everything that is required, and the expertise that was required. At that stage, how do you think what worked for you and what did not? And as essentially, how did this idea of understanding the sale idea or networking idea of actually creating a brand without advertising, how did that play out in that realm?
It's just a question of keeping your eyes open, honestly. And see, don't get me wrong here. I'm not dissing one system or the other. There are a lot of people who are extremely happy with the way the system is right now. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a question of, do you want to have your own set of clients that you speak to directly, who are your clients, even within a law firm? If that's what you want, yes, you need to reevaluate your options and kind of figure out, how am I going to play this out, right? There are, the numbers don't lie, right? So you have a lot of promotions and a lot of escalations that keep happening, and I keep asking myself whenever I see some of these promotions as to, does that mean that you actually get a share of the firm's profits? Because that's what partner means. If I'm bringing a partner on to Bridge Legal, you're a part of my partnership. I don't have to give you a salary, right? It makes sense that that would be equity. So anyway, all that apart, it's just a question of analyzing what you want to do. You would obviously see this when you start working, in terms of how the hierarchies work, what an SA is supposed to be doing, what a PA is supposed to be doing, what a partner is supposed to be doing, and what an equity partner is supposed to be doing. That's at least what the structure is currently, right? Unless you include counsel, which is another new thing. But you will be able to see this, and you need to ask yourself, okay, do I see myself doing that in 8 or 9 years? I get this question from a lot of people to say that, listen, I don't see myself doing this, in the long run, because I just don't like what I'm doing. And these people are really good at what they do. They've gotten through law school with excellent grades. They've loved law school more than anything else. Grades are not necessarily a good indicator. And they just don't like what they do. And then I start to realize that's because they don't have a stake in the actual product. If you speak with a client directly and you figure out, okay, this is what they want, or this is why they're raising money, even something as dry as corporate finance, right? You need to have direct client interactions. There needs to be that, it needs to be on the line, even as an intern, right? I put my interns through that. I actually make them, go through and speak to my clients to figure out exactly what the problem is, or exactly why their business is so important to them. Once you figure that out, that's when it becomes fulfilling, as opposed to you being in a rigid framework where you get 15 mails a day to say that do this, do that, do everything else, without seeing the larger picture. Even a duty can be extremely interesting if you just understand why. And even if you're working on just one chapter, you're going through just a lot of filings with one rep. If you have purpose, you'd like doing it. But a lot of people don't get that, and they just stagnate their way through 2 to 3 years, and they just keep their eye on, okay, higher salary, higher promotion, higher everything. And for what? I mean, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, what's the point? You're going home every day. If you're going home, you're just unable to sleep at night, thinking, okay, this sucks, right? So
Right.
that's it. So you need to keep your eyes open. And I think I mentioned this to you before. It's a bit unfair for me to be saying this. I'm one of those people who is quit over text messages because I got ticked with how a particular partner, has spoken to me, because I just find it to be extremely rude or outside protocol or inappropriate. But not a lot of people can do this. I recognize that, but that's just the way I've dealt with it. I've stuck to what I believe are my principles about things, and I've had a lot of fun doing it, honestly. So yeah, if you can, please do take that hard route. It's going to be extremely hard, but at least you'd go to bed every night knowing that, okay, you didn't guss out about stuff. So
Right. And how can perhaps an A0 or someone who's trying to enter into a law firm, or in fact, so okay, maybe law firm deciding teams and all is not always in your hand, but if someone is making a choice of either going to litigation or deciding to work in a law firm, how can they make an informed choice where to identify what interests may pan out in the future for them?
that's a very, very good question. There's something I need to mention here. Please do not go by the firm. Please go by the person you're going to be working with in the firm, or the people you're going to be working with in the firm. This is a highly intimate industry. You need to work as a team with people on a personal and professional basis. Post 6 p.m., I'm sorry, it's not that professional anymore, right? If someone's asking you to stay back and you're working till about midnight or beyond with someone else, it's not just professional. So you need to understand that you're literally putting your life in the hands of someone for what, 18 to 19 hours a day at least, right? So you need to understand, do you enjoy working with this person? Does the team respect you? Do they treat you with some degree of dignity? It's not a question of you knowing everything. If you knew everything, you'd be doing their job, right? So that's another point there. So it's very, very important to follow the person. I've had very good experiences with all the firms I've worked in, by the way. Very good experiences, very bad experiences, both. Right? It just depends on who you want to work with. So this A0s and me as well, when I used to intern and when I just graduated, used to have this conception that okay, this is the firm and this is what their culture is and this is how it's going to be. It's a good firm, top firm, big firm, whatever. No, you're following people. They're just people coming together and working together. It's almost like chambers, right? So
Yeah.
you really need to focus on who you're going to be working for. It's really important, especially when you need good mentoring. You need to understand that you need to have a very good relationship with whoever you're going to be working for and with both.
Right. Fair, fair. I think my senior that I've been working for about a year and a half now, Mr. Akash Prasad, he practices in Lucknow, and he is perhaps one of the. I feel very lucky as in to find a mentor here, and
Yeah,
he has made it a point that everyone works hard. And everyone does. There's no question about it. Even I love staying back. There have been instances where you stayed back, but he's
yeah,
kept every intern involved in every matter. So as to an extent where we really care about the consequences of the matter, maybe an arbitration that we were working on. And we
yeah,
genuinely did put in our wholehearted effort in make sure that there are no errors from our end or whatever. So I
yeah.
think if that sort of an atmosphere is created, people would be not afraid of the law firm culture. And maybe then they would be more enthusiastic to make an informed choice between litigation and law firm. Right now, I think the choice is about money. What is your opinion on that? Like right now, you choices if you want money in the initial stages, you join the law firm, and if you want to have variety, you go to litigation.
See, I can't comment on litigation because I haven't done it. Right? So I can't comment on. I've heard from a lot of very close friends that and batchmates that it's inconsistent slightly in terms of money flowing in. That the work can be hard sometimes, disproportionate how much you're making, etc. And more than anything else, is a lot of physical effort as opposed to sitting in an office, yeah, through a day, an air-conditioned office somewhere. So obviously, litigation I can't comment too much on, but at least with law firms, there's a lot to be improved upon for sure. It's hard to put just one uh, marker on what needs to be improved. But that's a very tough question. Honestly, I don't think I can answer that too well.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I understand why, because as someone who's also trying to make an informed choice in my final year, this is a very puzzling question that we come across. And one way I think we can learn more about it is perhaps from your own personal experience, because you did make a choice shifting from the in-house to the law firms. And when that choice was going on, your experience in in-house, what was that like? Was that useful to you? What was your experience in in-house, and what was your major takeaways there?
So I'll be very honest. So joining in-house was primarily because I had worked or rather interned in a lot of law firms before, and I wanted to get a sense of, and I'd interned in-house as well, right? So I of course really liked the way in-house functioned because you're working very closely with business. It's very interesting in that sense. It's I wouldn't call them mistakes that I've made. It's more or less a question of, okay, did I misassess a particular situation? So about 2.5 years working in-house, I started questioning whether I actually knew my fundamentals of law. Could you draft something from scratch? Could you negotiate something from scratch? Because at an in-house level, you're directing your external counsel to help you out with a lot of things that you need to do. It's a very hard task, 30,000 feet up in the air. But at the same time, I felt, okay, shouldn't I know these fundamentals as well? And that's where I started questioning, okay, was it a wise choice to start working in-house immediately after law school? Now, don't get me wrong, with the organization I worked with and started off with, they have a brilliant setup, training program, and structure wherein they get you up to speed, even though you graduate and just join them directly, because they have a very good team. And that's brilliant. As if you take on a fresh graduate and you get them working as an in-house counsel immediately, that's brilliant, right? But there was something lacking. This ties into your other question also separately about the cash situation, right? Of course, it's important. Let me not play it down. If I were to say that moving to a law firm was completely because I wanted to learn new skills and get to the grassroots, I'd be lying to you. I'm sorry, I was getting, I think, 30 to 40% more, right, from what I was used to, and I was supporting my family since that point of time, which is why I was trying to skirt this issue. So I've had points in time where money was important and money wasn't important. I just moved to Bombay. I needed the extra dough as well to kind of figure out expenses in Bombay, because I pretty much managed house expenses in Bombay as well. So that's more of a personal issue that I was trying to skirt there, but definitely relevant. It would be unfair for me to not mention that. So money was obviously a consideration, right? It's not just experience, but uh, the learning did work out in the long run. And retrospectively, if you look at the amount of time spent and the money earned, in-house was actually a better gig. Now that I look back into it, because if you were to just take the number of hours in a day that you put it into a law firm, and then you compare it to an in-house situation, which no doubt is a lot better, right? Because you're not looking at billables. You're not looking at just tracking, okay, this, and everything else. If the work's done, the work's done. If you can do it in half an hour, good for you. You don't have to, log it as being 3 hours, right? So there's no question of billables, etc. You get the same amount of salary anyway, as long as you're helping out business and they're happy with what you're doing. So looking back at it, I think law firms actually pay you lesser by the hour if you actually divide it in terms of how many hours are spent in house. So I have varying perspectives on this, but again, see, it's not just about the money. It's also about different kinds of experiences, learning, etc. With the different firms I've been with, I've learned different things. Each one has had such a different approach depending on which team member I'm working with. So the experience I can't put a number on. You know what I mean? So the money is largely irrelevant, which is another thing I keep mentioning to people. Just try to focus on getting good experience. And I know money is important, but don't just for an additional 30%. It's not going to make sense. If you're happy where you are, you're learning well, etc. The 30-40%, while it might seem really large to you at that point of time, it's not going to actually make a difference in the long run. So just look at what experience you want to gain and whether you have fun doing it. So that would be my takeaway from all of this. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. I think that's very interesting. And when you talk about the difference in the structure, what was the difference in the work group? I think I've asked you this yesterday, and I think it would be very beneficial for the viewers as well. So we sort of have an understanding of how law firms function, how the teams function, what kind of engagement they have. We don't have that level of an understanding how in-house functions. So the perception, as I've shared this with you before as well, is that there's majorly operational contracts. But what exactly is the work profile of what work environment or the level of engagement that you have in an in-house environment?
Yeah. So like I was saying, it's changed over the course of the decade, right? So my super seniors, let's say batches of 96, 2000, something like that, right? And a lot of other law schools as well, not just my law school, but they've created the groundwork in a lot of these organizations where they've created processes, playbooks, templates that people use till date. A senior of mine was recently quipping about the fact that securitization documents are still, vaguely resemble what the original securitization documents were from ICICI back in 2099, I think, right? So they've set the groundwork. So in-house counsel a decade ago and now are very different. In-house counsel, even let's say 5 years ago and now, are a little different. So standing on the shoulders of giants in a way. So these people have set up these operational procedures, etc. You have to understand, someone had to set that up for you, right? So they were also in-house counsel at that point in time. Another way of looking at it, and you typically have two kinds of mindsets with in-house counsel these days, with my generation and with the newer generation, is, do you want to continue doing that in terms of operationalizing it, using your legal acumen to kind of figure out problems, work on contracts, give solutions to everyday business problems, some which may not have been thought about before also? Or do you want to better the system? Because you will always find two very different kinds of people. So there are both kinds of in-house counsel. So there is the other kind of in-house counsel that also looks at a process and says, hey, this was done 10 to 15 years ago. I think we can better this now. I think it needs to evolve. The law is evolving, the regulations are evolving. We need to evolve with it. And that's not a hard, that's not an easy job, Kaustubh. So
Yeah.
it's not something that is procedural or operational. So to say or to label any in-house counsel as being just doing operational work is extremely unfair to most of them,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of them try to improve processes. They try to look at new laws and regulations and work on them, and they're trying to cut costs by trying to not reach out to external legal counsel when they don't have to, because that saves an
Yeah.
organization money. That's their role, right? To have someone in-house as opposed to going externally. With a law firm structure, it's a little different. Obviously, you are a specialist. You're supposed to know things inside out. So when people do come to you, you're supposed to. There's no passing the buck on to anyone else. So with an in-house counsel, at some point
Yeah.
you can say, okay, I'm going to reach out to this advocate, or I'm going to reach out to this lawyer, or I'm going to reach out to this law firm and get quotes for my mandate. But as a law firm lawyer, you have to ask yourself, okay, who do I pass the buck on to? There is no one.
Yeah.
No one's found a document. No one's found a particular way to make a structure work. You need to do it. So that's where it gets really hard for a law firm lawyer as well to say that, okay, they finally come to me. They're going to be paying me a lot more than they're paying their in-house counsel for
Yeah.
this particular transaction. So I need to make it worth it, right? So that's the primary difference. But it's blurring quite a bit, Costa, between these two roles. There's a lot of blur that's now going on. I see a lot of in-house counsel a lot of them being better than law firm lawyers. And I see a lot of law firm lawyers having a lot more business sense than a lot of in-house lawyers. So it's intersecting quite a bit, to be very
Okay.
honest.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for explaining it with so much depth. Obviously, this is something I genuinely believe this is the entire point of this podcast. There's something that I personally was perhaps not aware of. And as you stated in the beginning, it's a selfish endeavor from my part as well. So maybe I can learn more and more about it, make an informed choice at the end of my final year, perhaps. But as we talk about the final year, let's go back to your law school days and perhaps something that I was genuinely interested in asking, because I was reading one of your interviews where you were answering the questions of the law students that they asked you. And apart from the grades and all those routine questions, there was one where they asked you whether mooting or any other such co-curricular activity was just as important, or how important is it really? So from that taste, my perspective here for the question is that when you were in law school and you were perhaps somehow inching towards the final years, what was your experience like, and what in like when you look at it in the hindsight, would you say that other things that a law student could have or should have avoided, and rather focused on, let's say, for some other things while being in law school that could benefit them?
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. My closest friend and I have a conversation about this very often, especially when we come up with ideas for business and any entrepreneurial venture, and we keep telling ourselves we shouldn't have wasted this much time in law school, because we should have been doing other things as well. But when I look back at it, fine, you had your fun. There's plenty of time for work later on. So I think people are getting a bit too hard on themselves as to what they need to achieve in law school. It is by all means supposed to be a very enjoyable endeavor. Most of my classes, I'd say most of my classes, I had a lot of fun with. I may have given repeat examinations a lot of times because I had a lot of fun also answering my question papers.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun doing it. That's the really important thing. So going back to law school, do these things count? They count at a personal level in terms of giving you aspects that people can consider. So I'll give you an example. So I had a very fun interview when I was in law school, when I sat for placements. It was a very, very fun interview. So we had a few technical questions, and the HR asked a few questions, etc. And on my CV, this one-pager CV, it also mentioned, okay, joint convener of the sports committee in law school, and also part of the university basketball team, right? So one would think, okay, what's the point? I didn't moot, but I'd assume that mooting or debating would also come under one of those categories. So, or better actually. Sorry for bringing it down to sport, but
Oh my
so I
God.
was asked a question. So I was asked a question by the recruiter out of the blue. Also a senior from college, by the way. Very, very, very good person, to take my interview, especially for the first time. And he asked me, "Oh, so you played basketball?" I said, "Yeah."
Mhm.
And he said, "So which position did you play?" And I was dumbstruck. I was like, "Okay, is that an interview question? Why is he asking me that question?"
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to highlight here is that these interests and these activities that you do on the side, they make a big difference in terms of how people connect to you later on. It makes it a lot less drab. If you were to choose between 2 to 3 different kinds of people to be on your team, and then someone actually displays an actual personality, which one would you go for? So if you're moting, or if you're
Yeah.
debating, or even if you have a podcast, it may be irrelevant to the actual job, right? But there's a lot you can gauge from that as well. So for example, someone who learns and practices music, I know for a fact that, okay, so their technical capabilities will be on point. They have very, very good coordination and technical skill. When did they pick up the instrument? How proficient are they at it? They'd probably be really good. People who play a sport, or even something as silly as gaming, fine, they work as a team. Right? They know what it's like to be a part of a team. So that's how you work there. You have podcasts, you have an affinity for art, and also, you know, production.
Yeah.
That tells me, okay, this person actually likes creating, right? So these are not useless endeavors. So these things which you do in law school, they may not add CV value to a lot of people, and I hate that term. I hate the term CV value, and actually I hate CVs, in fact, because they're the worst reflection of someone's capabilities. But
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. Why can't people just have fun? I mean, if you're mooting, if you're debating, if you're doing all of these activities, that's great. That means you've actually taken out time and done something when no one's putting a gun to your head. That means you actually like doing it. That's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And mooting is hard. Anyone who disses mooting, or anyone who disses debating,
Mhm.
they need to try it. The reason I didn't do it is because it was too rigorous for me.
Yeah.
I'd rather go to the basketball court and shoot a few hoops, right? But
Yeah.
that's me. So when I see someone who's actually doing a lot of mooting and debating, I'm okay. Props to you. I know how hard
Yeah.
it is. There's
Mhm.
one formatting error out of place. So if you're going and being a speaker, you're grilled inside out, right? So
Yeah.
you need to respect that. So I hope recruiters also
Mhm.
kind of give the value that they should be giving to a lot of these extracurriculars. For sure, it's we need to go beyond just a CGPA. That's for certain.
Mhm. Right. And I think this might lead to a repetitive answer, but I have to ask you this. You say you hate CVs as a concept.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you hate CVs?
You can't. Okay, it's not just CVs, but it's also the procedure. The current situation we have is a lot of CVs floating around. Sometimes AI or software used to sift through it, or recruiters going through maybe 200, 300 CVs and just looking at what catches their eye a little better, or if something that's more relevant. And pursuant to that, you have multiple rounds of interviews, sometimes asking questions about aspects of a CV, etc. It just makes no sense. I think we need a better form of recruitment. For example, there are some firms and there are some companies that use tests to recruit. That's brilliant. You know exactly what you're looking for. You put the person through a test. You want to analyze their drafting skill, give them a document, ask them
Yeah.
to correct it or proofread it, right?
Mhm.
What are you doing at a CV level? You're judging a book by its cover, right? And it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation because of a lot of the CVs that I see or read, they aren't really drafted the best way. But how does one expect them to know what kind of CV to draft for a company or for a law firm, depending on the practice area? How do they know? When you're coming out of college, you don't know. You just know that, okay, some senior has used this draft or someone else has gotten a job with this particular CV, but it's a chicken and egg situation there. You draft a bad CV and you send it across, you don't get a job. You don't get a job, you don't learn exactly how to draft, or rather what skills to put onto a CV. There's no course in law school that actually preps you up for this, which is why you have a lot of these new ventures that CV writing and a lot of that, right? With training for law firms also. A couple of them that come to mind. Not going to take any names here. Some of them are doing really good. They're doing good jobs there, but
Yeah.
some of them are a bit gimmicky. But yeah, that's why
Yeah.
they're filling that void. They're filling that void of, okay, this person's graduating, the person doesn't know what skills they need to actually get a job, and it's a bit of a downfall at the law school level as well. We're not prepping. When I say we, it's because I'm now a part of the system that's now accountable for something like this. We're not training people to actually be employment ready. So that's why I don't like CVs, Kaustubh. I don't like the concept. I think that conversations need to be had, especially in a personal setup. We come back to the first point. You can't have HR acting as a glass wall between a team that needs a member and potential candidates that could be very good candidates for that team. So the system's completely broken. It's nonsensical, and you can see that a lot of people out without jobs. A lot of people just don't know what to do once they graduate. So that's a problem that needs to be fixed for sure.
Wonderful. I think this is the realest conversation I've had. Honestly, on this podcast, not just in a podcast, in life, this is the realest conversation I've had. So, okay, as we somehow reach to the conclusion of this conversation, I just have one question for you. Like, when we look at the current market situation, you see the unemployment in law is something that is not much talked about, but still prevalent. So the law students are very eager and desperate to somehow stand out, learn more, perform better, get better, and do so many other things, especially the ones who are ready to enter the industry now. What are your suggestions, perhaps? And coming back to the theme of this episode, what is it that the law students should do or should not do in order to perhaps be unique, stand out, or be a better candidate for the industry?
That's it's more or less on the industry itself. To be very honest, it would be very unfair to give a lot of in the colloquial word gyan to a lot of these new graduates. It's not something that is their fault. If you've gotten into college and you've studied and you want to get a corporate law job, and that's what's been sold to you not only by your university in terms of placements, but also by your seniors and how the job structure works. The fact that there are no vacancies, or the fact that the way most law firms are functioning right now, that they can't hire more than a particular amount of people, that's not the graduate's fault. That's the job market's fault. And even there, so there's a bit of a problem there. And I'm not passing the buck on to firms, not only mine or any other firm. They're also getting very limited business. So we're speaking about realist conversations. Let me be very real about this as well.
Yeah.
The law firm industry was heading towards the corporate law firm industry. Let me be very clear. There are too many cases at actual court levels. We need a lot more litigators. That's another problem, right? Why people are not getting into litigation. Obviously, the situation is because of money, right? There's no constant source of income the moment you graduate. That's a separate issue. I'm not going to comment on that. Someone in the litigation industry can comment on that. But let me just speak from the perspective of corporate law, right? We were heading towards a bubble for the past 7 to 8 years, right? Your income as a law firm is from business. The Indian economy has not been doing too well. The money making areas are actually in the realms of insolvency and bankruptcy. That should give you a clue as to how businesses are functioning, right? The second thing is the cost models are just not working out for a lot of clients. When I speak to a lot of clients, and that's another reason why I'm practice on my own, I can do mandates even for free. I can do mandates for something as low as, I'm not going to mention numbers here. That's surrogate advertising right there, so I'm going to stop myself. But the point is that law firms with their current rates and their cost of acquisition and the amount of retainer fees that they pay their retainers and lawyers do not match the amount of business that's coming. Some firms have figured that out. They're functioning very lean. They're doing very well. Some firms are just heading towards inevitable collapse. And you can speak to any one of these firms, right? Because there is a bubble there. So what does that tell you? The way you're creating jobs is completely, it's nonsensical, right? The salaries that you're trying to give people the moment they graduate, it might have seemed amazing, but it's not sustainable. You can hire maybe 20 to 30 people every year on rotation, accounting for attrition and resignations and all sorts of nonsense. But you need to be hiring a lot more people. But you can only hire a lot more people if there's a lot more business coming in. And business will only come in if your rates are normal. And India is already charging very low rates as opposed to lawyers across the globe. So there is a supply-demand mismatch. The way the industry is working around it is to say that we will just hire lesser people and those fewer people, and the fewer people that we do hire will be made to work a lot more, and we will compensate you with a lot more salary. That needs to change. A lot more
Yeah.
people need to be hired, especially at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
The salaries need to be commensurate to how much time they need to be they need to be putting in, and there needs to be a lot less pressure as well on a lot of people at the A0 A1 level. You should not have to put your health, both physical and mental, at risk because someone's trying to milk every single ounce of the minute of the day out of you.
Yeah.
So there is a problem. Some firms are doing great things about it. They're actually reworking those models, and these are the ones that are actually going to benefit a lot of these graduates. So,
Yeah.
Kausab, to stand out, to answer your question now, coming back to it, obviously you could do things to make you stand out and be exceptional. It helps if you're from a college that has better branding. Sadly, that is the truth. That also needs to change. Again, change not at the graduate level, but at the industry recruiter level, right? So these things need to be done at our end.
Yeah.
I feel really sad for graduates with the situation they need to work with right now because there are so many law
Mm-hmm.
schools in India, and it's a scary situation to think that the supply is
Yeah.
outstripping demand, and something needs to be done about it. So there's no clear cut advice there, Kausim. Honestly, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that needs to change. But I think I mentioned this to you in a very separate conversation. The batches that went through a lot of crises when they graduated, and this is not me selling optimism here, for some reason they do very, very well much later on. So the batches from 2008,
Yeah.
2009, right? They've become some of the best lawyers that I've seen. The batches from, I think somewhere close to, yeah, some of them had it really, really easy. But yeah, I think 2008 is the best batch to put a marker on because that's when the subprime kind of dominoed on to India, right? A little late because of our own regulations, but that's an optimistic way to look at it. Adversity is not
Yeah.
necessarily just a bad thing. You will adapt, you will evolve, you will be ready for almost anything. And it's very easy for me to say, I know that, right?
Yeah.
But this is me being realistic, at least with the statistics that I know. I know for a fact that people who have graduated in tumultuous times have come out being great, great lawyers, better than a lot of other lawyers, in fact.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think this last segment can itself be a conversation that I would love to have. I think I was just listening to it and I was just imagining how difficult is it for majority of the law students and especially the ones who are trying to do something about it. And I'm truly grateful for every law firm or every senior or anyone who's a recruiter essentially who either identifies this and is doing something about it. I think I just had a conversation with Miss Mani Gupta, and she was talking about including the mental health charter in Sarthak Advocates and
Mm,
Associates, which
mm,
was
mm.
revolutionary. I think she also talks about IBA surveys and whatnot. So I think, and she also mentioned NDA implementing the unlimited leave policy for their associates in a way or the other. So I think whatever firms, whatever recruiters are doing their part, I think really grateful for that. But nonetheless, this particular section and the entire conversation in itself is absolute gold, sir. I think uh, some way or the other, I think I really enjoyed today's conversation. Although I know we wanted to make it unscripted, but it somehow,
Yeah.
if
And
not
someone
maybe,
became a little.
yeah, if not maybe 100% unscripted, it definitely was very enriching. Something I was really looking forward to. So I had a wonderful time. So do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, just one thing to add there. So firms can have all the charters they want and all the policies they want. Just hire more people. It's fine. And
Yeah.
at the graduate level, it doesn't have to be at obscenely high salary amounts. I mean, if you could hire two people at half the salary each, as opposed to just having one person with a salary that you think is commensurate to pretty much own their soul, the former is a lot better. That needs to change, and that's a bit of
Yeah.
mindset that's also there at the graduate level. I can tell you this. Any lawyer will tell you this. In any team, they are short staffed. They don't have the budget,
Uh-huh.
they don't have the billables to actually recruit too many more people. That needs to be fixed. That means that we've been getting paid too much. And we've been under the assumption that because you're getting paid so much that you will put in 18, 19 hours a day. It is not sustainable. It simply is not sustainable. You will put your physical, mental health at risk. It's going to be horrendous, and you need to be enjoying what you're doing. I'm not saying that you're not going to put in a lot of time in a day. If you're working as a lawyer, it's never going to be sunshine and roses, but you need to have fun doing it. And this needs to be the exception to the norm. I still do it. There will be days when all-nighters are pulled. I'm getting too old for that. But yeah, there will still be nights when all-nighters are pulled, when 18, 19 hours days are done. But I have rest periods after it. And I do that maybe once or twice a week, not longer than that, because I know my body's not going to be able to take it. Right. So stuff needs to be fixed. Let that be the closing remark in terms of realism. For the love of God, hire more people. There are people begging to get hired, right? I don't think you need to give. You don't have to care about what your placement numbers are going to be. You don't have to care about your image about so and so firm pays this much to a fresh graduate and so firm pays so and so to a graduate. Chuck that. That's pointless. You're just putting yourself up in a pedestal. More people are going to be getting into law schools and looking into this corporate law dream, right? Only to find out that there aren't as many slots available for it. So we need to be a lot less exclusionary about it, and it goes both ways. You need to be ready to take a bit of a hit just for the sake of your mental and physical health, right? So that needs to change.
Absolutely.
The writing's on the wall. Some of them have seen it. Some of them are, just they don't care. They're saying, okay, fine, let the teams function the way they're functioning right now. The deals will get done. Okay, if deliverables are a day or two late, then we're going to scream or yell, and the client's not happy. But please, for the love of God, that's not the way to function. Oh, oops, sorry. That's not the way to function.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. I think that's definitely something that we needed a conversation on. I don't think I have either heard or have been a part of or have either witnessed any such conversation anywhere in these various webinars and podcasts and whatnot that happen. I at least never had this conversation, to say the least. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. It was truly an honor, and I hope you had a good time.
Yes, I had a great time. This was a good conversation. Thanks for being a great host. It takes a lot of skill. Thank you for bearing with the IT issues that we've had. And I really hope that I'm glad that you had a good conversation. That comes back down to the point. If you can touch this one other person, in your job's done. So I'm glad we had this conversation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.